All right, today we are going to be working on some common methods that are used in arrays. Now, in my previous video on arrays, I showed you guys how to basically just create an array, which is right here, how to populate it with random numbers, and then display the array. So today I'm going to show you a few common things that people typically do with arrays. All right, so let's start off here. We're going to actually just set this up using a simple menu system. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to add methods to it and just add items to the menu system as we go. We're going to start off with a numbers array. So we're going to say int numbers is equal to new int, and let's give it 100 numbers in this case. All right, now in my previous video, I said to use the size variable to set the size, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use numbers.length in order to access the size throughout. All right, so, all right, let's take a look. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by creating a do while here. All right, so int choice is equal to 0. And we're going to say system.out.println, let's say 1. Okay, so 0, 1. Populate the array sequentially. All right, so we're going to populate the array sequentially as the first thing. Now, at the same time, we're going to have to also just be able to display the array. And there's a populate random that I want to do. So I'm going to put, well, let's do it now. Populate the array randomly. Okay, and system.out.println, we'll go 3. Display the array. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, actually, I'm going to need a few other things before I can continue. Scanner input is equal to new scanner. So we're going to create a scanner to read the user's choice. Okay, have to import that. We are going to just assume that the user is not going to enter like bad data, so we're not going to error trap this. Okay, and I think we're good. Okay, so what we're going to do is put a prompt here, and we will say, please enter a choice. All right, this will just be a print, so it appears on the same line, and then we will say choice is equal to input dot next int. What we're going to do is we're going to run this continuously. So we're going to say while choice does not equal to 0. Right, and we will add item 0 here. Exit the program. All right, so when we run this, you can see it'll say exit the program, enter. So I can just enter whatever I want every time. Okay, right now I don't have any of those things set to actually do anything, except when I enter 0, then it just ends the program. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to add in different things. So we're going to say if, okay, so if our choice was 1, okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to call a method called Populate Sequentially. All right, now what we have to do, because the array was created in the scope of the main program, we actually have to pass it. So we're going to have to say numbers. Okay, so populate sequentially numbers. Okay, let's take a look. So we'll go public static void populate sequentially int array numbers. Okay, so what we're doing here is we are passing the array we're telling the method that it's going to need an integer array, or it should expect to get one, and then here we are passing it. A common mistake is in the arguments. Very often people will go like this. right? And what they're doing here is they're trying to tell the computer that this is an array that they're sending. But you don't have to do that because the computer already knows that it's an array that's being sent, all right? So you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so populate sequentially. And all we're going to do in populate sequentially is, well, populate sequentially. All right, so how do we do that? We're going to start off with a for loop. X is less than numbers dot length. Okay, and x plus plus. And then what we're going to do is just say numbers at x. So we're going to access each one of the array indexes separately. Numbers at x is equal to, let's say, x plus 1. All right, so we run it. Doesn't seem to be any problem. We run option 1 and, well, that's great, but we can't actually check to see if it worked because we don't have the display yet. So the very next thing we need to do is actually to display this array. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add that in. If choice is equal to 3, display the numbers. Okay, so we'll go and we will start building this. Public static void display int array numbers. Okay, and all right. Now, some people will just do something like this. They'll just copy this loop from here, and then they'll just say system.println numbers at x. Okay, and this is going to work. Okay, so if I just say populate sequentially, okay, there you go. You can see the numbers are all populated sequentially. However, this is actually really a terrible way of displaying. And so what people will often do is they will say something like this. They'll say, oh, okay, well, if you don't want a big row or big column, we'll just change it into a row. All right, so we can print it like this. So 1, 3. Okay, well now we have the opposite problem where you can never see the whole array all at once, and it's kind of a pain to do it this way. All right, so what we're going to do is we are actually going to print it into columns here. So we're going to say if. Now, occasionally, every 10th number, we want to actually print an end line. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with this. If x modulus 10 is equal to 0, okay, then just print a print line statement. Now, this isn't going to work like we think, like many people will think it will. All right, but we'll see what happens here. So we're going to go to sequential and then display. And you can see it mostly works. Okay, mostly works. However, this 1 is all by itself, and then down here, we didn't get the proper end line. Now, the reason why is because we start off at 0, and 0 modulus 10 is equal to 0, so we get the end line there. So what we actually have to do is we have to say x plus 1 modulus 10. All right, so populate sequentially and display. And then we get a pretty decent one. I still don't like how it looks here with the single digit numbers, and they're just not being spaced out properly just because of the fact that they're single digits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fix this up a bit. I'm going to say if the number is greater than 9, if numbers at x is greater than 9, okay, then we print it with 1 space. Okay, else if numbers at x is less than or equal to 10, less than or equal to 10, or less than 10, then we'll print the same thing, numbers at x, but we'll print it with 2 spaces. All right, let's see how that looks. Okay, so we got 1, 3, and that should have been a print. Let's try it again. 1, 3, there we go. Okay, now all I'm going to do here is in the menu, I am going to put an end line there just so we space out the menu from the display. So we got 1, 3, okay, And that actually looks pretty good. I will also put a system.print line here just to kind of make some better spacing. There we go. That looks a lot nicer. Okay, so you can see now we have our array. It's being displayed in neat columns, and it does actually go from 1 to 100. So the next thing to do would be to put in option 2. So we're going to say if choice is equal to 2, populate randomly. All right, so let's go and do that. So public static void populate randomly. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, it's actually very simple. It's almost exactly the same as this method here. We're just going to actually copy that. But instead of saying numbers at x is equal to 1, what we will do is we'll just say numbers at x is equal to math.random times 100 plus 1. All right, so we're going to generate numbers from 1 to 100. Hopefully this works. Okay, so we'll go and populate randomly, display, and there you go. We have looks like a random assortment of numbers. I don't see any zeros or hundreds there, but I think it's probably fine. Let's see, to randomly display. Yeah, now we have 100 there. Now this 100 kind of botches things. It messes up our display. So I'm going to go back to the display because that sort of thing actually kind of really bothers me. So we're going to say this one gets 3, this one will get 2, and in this program we're only ever going, if it's let's see, if its number is greater than 9, so we actually need to change this. Let's say less than 100. So less than 100 we print it with 2 spaces, less than 10 we print it with 3 spaces. The only other thing could be is 100, so we're going to just say numbers at x plus, and we'll just print it with 1 space. All right, let's check it out. So randomly display, and something is a bit off there. So numbers with 100. All right, I see it. The problem here is actually just the order that we did things in. Because we checked here, if the number is less than 100, then what happens is the number actually showed up to be like a number like 6 is less than 100, so it actually goes into this if statement. What we need to do is actually just move things around a little bit. We're going to take this if statement and put it first. So we're going to check if it's less than 10 first. And then if it's not less than 10, then we check if it's less than 100, and if it's not less than 100, then it must be 100. So we can actually make it work just like that. All right, let's try it again. There we go. And we don't have any hundreds here. Let's try and just see if we can get it to get 100 in there just to make sure it actually displays properly. Oh, there was one. Okay, so there's 100. Now this is why, and I always emphasize this to my students, is that frequent testing is super important, right? Because like if you don't test and test thoroughly, then very often like little things can like that can slip under the radar and you don't pick them up. And then when you build your code, you're building actually on mistakes or errors or omissions, and then your code actually just gets worse and worse. And then when you try and fix something, it's often very difficult to fix it. So a thing that I often point out is just how frequently I test. And it's a good strategy for most people to do. Okay, anyways, so we have some simple things like this. So populate the array sequentially, populate the array randomly, and display the array. I'm just going to do one more for this video just to keep it kind of short, and then I will do some other ones in an upcoming video. Okay, so let's go here, and we will just say shuffle the array. Okay, so we're just going to copy this. These should be else's. Okay, and we'll just change this to shuffle. All right. So how do we shuffle the array? Public static void shuffle int numbers. Okay, let's take a look here and let's say we did this. Int index1 is equal to int math.random times the numbers.length. All right, what that would do is it's going to give us, it'll set index1 to be a random number from 0 to 0 to the length of the array. So it's going to be times 100, right? So we can test this out. It's a small print line, and we'll just say print line index1. Okay, so we run this, and we don't actually need to shuffle it, or we don't actually need to populate, and nothing printed. So this looks fine. There it is. Just forgot to change this to choice 4. So I'll run it again, choice 4, and we have index 44. Okay, well, so what? Well, let's say, for instance, we did the same thing, but we made it index 2. All right, and actually this won't do anything so far if we just run it because I don't even display anything right now. Now let's say, so what we're going to do is we're going to get one random index and another random index. And what we could do is we could do something like this. Int temp is equal to numbers at index 1. Numbers at index 1 is equal to numbers at index 2. And then numbers at index 2 is equal to temp. So we're just going to swap. All right, so let's try that out here. We're going to go sequential. We will display it. There's our sequential one. We shuffle it and then display it again. And what we should notice is that 2 numbers have been moved. Okay, so there's number 21 has been swapped out, and in its spot, you can see 66. So 66 and 21 were moved. So you can see this is actually shuffling. It's just terrible shuffling because you only did it once. Now, there is a way you can do this, is you can actually just bury this into a loop, this whole thing, and just keep repeating it over and over again. The problem with this method, though, is that it's kind of inefficient because you're going to generate some numbers over and over again, and you can't guarantee that every number will be shuffled in a reasonable way. The only way you can guarantee that every number will be shuffled is just to shuffle this like a crap ton of times. So instead of actually just doing 2 indexes, what we can do is we can just put this into a loop. So let's say for int x is equal to 0, x is less than numbers.length, and x plus plus. Okay, so as I said, we could actually just bury this into a loop, and this will kind of work. I'll show you what I mean. So we'll go to shuffle the array. Oh, actually, I didn't populate it, so I'll populate, shuffle, display. All right, and there we have our display, our shuffled array. But as you can see, there are some numbers that didn't get shuffled. Okay, so like for instance, 81 didn't get shuffled, 99 didn't get shuffled. You can see all around that there's some numbers. So, all right, so like all the numbers ending in 1 here should all end in 1 in this one, all in 2s in this one. And so, you know, for the most part it was, all right, but for instance, actually this should be 12, so it's fine, right? So for the most part it's okay, but there are still some numbers that were not shuffled. So what we can do though is instead of generating 2 indexes, what we can do is actually just shuffle the number at x. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say temp is equal to number index 1. Index 1 is equal to the number at x, and then the number x is equal to temp, like that. And so what we do is we actually just go to the first number and swap it with a random other number. And then what we do is go to the next number and swap that one and then the next one. And that way we guarantee that every single number will actually get swapped somewhere else in the list. So it is actually a better way to shuffle, and it's more efficient, especially for large lists. So one of the things, though, is that some people will say, well, isn't it possible that a number would get shuffled back into its original position? And yes, that is actually true, that that can happen. But that's actually okay, because when you're randomizing, there's not actually anything saying that a number cannot go back to its original position. If you said that a number can't go back to its original position, then you're not truly randomizing. So it's actually fine that we are going to that numbers can go back to their original position. Like imagine if you shuffled a deck of cards, like the best way actually is to just throw all the cards onto a table and like stir them up, right? But even if you did that, there's actually a decent chance that one card would actually go back to its proper position, right? So I mean, but that's okay. That's how shuffling works. All right. Anyways, so we're gonna clean this up here a little bit, all right? And there we go. Now, one other question that often comes up is that people will say, well, what's the difference? Like, why wouldn't you just populate randomly instead of populating sequentially and shuffling, right? And there is actually a difference, right? So if I populate sequentially, okay, so there's my sequential array, I shuffle it and display it again. You can see there it is. And I populate randomly and display. Now, they both look random, right? And in a way they kind of are, like they are shuffled, but the problem is that the random array, which is down here, actually has repeat values, right? So there's an 8 here, and I saw another 8 somewhere. Yeah, there's another 8, right? Whereas up here there are no repeat values, right? And for instance, there should be 100. Yep, there's a 100 there, but this one, actually there is 100, but this one doesn't necessarily have to have 100. In fact, this one is likely, well, not likely, certainly missing some numbers, right? Especially because, for instance, there's a 3, there's a 3, there's another 3, there's another 3, here's a 6, a 6, a 6, right? And we have the pair of 8s. So in order for numbers to actually repeat, then some numbers had to be omitted. Right, so that's it for now for this one. Join me for the next video, and what I'll do is I'll go through some other common methods that we use with arrays. So remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.